2 years of studying in medical school and experimenting with a bunch of different study techniques, here are my top 3 frameworks or tools for students who want to achieve good grades but also have time to spend with friends and family, and also have time to work on other side projects or side hustles. In no particular order, those are: firstly, to focus. I know it sounds trivial, but I think there's something to explore here. Secondly, to study smart and not hard, that you have to constantly be asking yourselves questions while you're studying to strengthen those neural connections. And thirdly, to find your groove. A bunch of people will use different types of study techniques. Ask them about it, how do they study, and then take some of the things that they use and create your own strategy for approaching your studying. When Warren Buffett, probably the most successful investor of our time, and Bill Gates, billionaire philanthropist, were both asked to write down one word on a piece of paper that was the key to their success, they both said the same word: focus. Essentially, can you sit down and do the task in front of you and just not get distracted? We all get distracted, but there are techniques that you can implement to avoid that from happening. Firstly, one of the things that I use quite a lot is to, rather than spend my whole day just studying the same thing, I'll split it up into different topics. So rather than just spending the whole day doing anatomy, I'll do some anatomy, some pathology, some physiology. Now, that's subject to change, especially if you've got, for example, an exam just coming up on a certain topic, so just anatomy. But you can still implement this to an extent. So rather than just spending your whole day on the same subtopic, so for example, spending your whole day studying the upper limb of the body, mix it up, do a bit of upper limb, do a bit of lower limb, do a bit of topography of the abdomen. Keep it fresh. You don't want to get bored because that will lead to distraction. Now, I read an interesting study about this. It was the beanbag toss experiment. So psychologists had 2 groups of kids, and the aim was for those kids to throw a beanbag into a bin from 1 meter of 10 distances. They split the kids into 2 groups, Group A and Group B. Now, Group A practiced for a whole week just throwing the beanbag into the bin from 10 meters. Group B practiced for a whole week throwing the beanbag into the bin, but from various different distances, from 1 meter away from the bin, from 2 meters, from 5 meters, from 15 meters. When it came to the final assessment, where they stood the kids 10 meters away from the bin and asked them all to stand in a line and throw the beanbag into the bin, do you think it was Group A, who had been practicing that exact thing, same distance, 10 meters for 1 week, who were more successful? Or do you think it was Group B, who had been practicing at various different distances? Well, surprising to me, it was actually Group B who performed better. It goes against your logical thinking. Group A, who have been practicing throwing the beanbag into the bin from 10 meters, for this assessment, which is throwing the beanbag into the bin from 10 meters, were outperformed by Group B. How does that even work? Well, Group B gained this mastery as to the weight of the bag and the variation when it comes to throwing at different distances. They gained this deeper level of understanding, which Group A simply didn't have. And that's something that I've been really trying to apply in my study routine. And it's this idea that your brain, for whatever reason, is able to process, implement and remember things better when you study different things or do different skill sets rather than just doing the same thing or studying the same topic. It's backed by psychology. Give it a try. Maybe it will work for you. Definitely worked for me. I'll leave a link to that experiment in the video description. Another technique that I use to stay focused is the Pomodoro Technique. So I use an app called Forest on my phone. I'll put a timer for 30 minutes, so it's 30 minutes on, then 5 minutes break. I'll often put a Forest timer on just to make studying slightly more fun. The final tip I have for keeping focused is to keep it fun. Go to different restaurants, go to different libraries, keep it fresh. Novelty is actually a great way to stay in that flow state where you're completely focused on the task in hand, almost to the extent that you lose track of time. The second study hack is to study smart and not hard. Your practice has to be purposeful. We've often heard that you need to do 10,000 hours of anything to become an expert in it. And I'm not suggesting you do 10,000 hours of studying, but it's not just the fact that it's 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 hours of purposeful practice. So I'll give you a clear example of this. You may have spent more than 10,000 hours behind the wheel driving, but you're not a Formula One driver. And it comes back to this idea of purposeful practice. Sure, you can spend a lot of time doing something, but if it's not purposeful and your focus is on improving then it's essentially pointless. And when it comes to studying, the way I like to think about this is you have to constantly be testing yourself. I learn a lot more from doing half an hour of MCQs than doing half an hour of just reading passively through my textbook. Final study hack is to find your groove. Find what works for you. I'm not gonna lie, I only really found what truly works best for me in terms of achieving the best results by the second year of medical school. I went through a phase where I saw my friends using flashcards and Anki, so I started making flashcards, and then by the end of the year I had a massive deck of like 1,000 cards and I couldn't finish them all before the final exam. And so yeah, I learned the hard way that that technique didn't necessarily work for me. And that's the point. You've got to experiment and try different things before you find what truly works. So yeah, stay focused by studying different things throughout the day rather than the same thing, or using the Pomodoro Technique, or making it fresh by putting music in the background, or studying in a new coffee shop or library. Study smart and not hard. You've got to be testing yourself if you want that information to stick inside the back of your head. Then finally, find your groove. Experiment with what works, see what doesn't work, and implement those strategies in order to achieve the best possible outcomes. I hope you found this video useful. All the links will be in the description down below. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you all very soon.